Greetings and welcome to this short video where I demonstrate how to create responsive content in HTML5 and CSS. In this video, we are going to use the Add Media directive to effect responsiveness within our website. So let's switch over to the IDE. So this is a blank template which we are going to use to build our responsive page. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to add a title to our page. Okay, let's say we want to make a couple of boxes, a profile, um, a profile box. Let's put 6 of them. So this one is for the first person. Then let's create another profile box. Um, that's 5. Okay, that's about 7 items. So we are going to add just a few simple styles to the div. Um, or maybe before we do that, let's add a class to each of these items. Let's just call it a profile box. Something close to this. Okay. So from our styling, remember I said in the previous lessons, you mustn't put your styles within your HTML document, but for the sake of simplicity, we are going to be doing so. But um, for serious work, you shouldn't put your CSS within your HTML content. So the first style that we want to put, maybe let's put a border here. It's 1 pixel solid. Let's just give it a color black. So let's see how this would look in our browser. Okay. So a div naturally grows vertically. In other words, if you create 2 divs, one is going to appear on top of the other. And normally a div occupies the full width of the screen or of its parent container. But in this case, the parent is the body, so the div will occupy the full width. So the next thing that we want, let's say we want each of these boxes to be smaller. We can give it a smaller width of, say, 50. Let's see what happens if we give it a width of 50. Well, it looks like our content is still growing vertically, and we are not seeing the divs appearing side by side. But that would have been convenient. So maybe let's try to reduce the size again to 25. So, okay. So in order for us to have our divs going side by side, we'll need to put a container for all the divs. So we can put another container. So let's just call it profile container. Then we need to introduce a certain display style, because by default uh, divs have um, uh, they are displayed as blocks. So when you have a div and you have another one, they appear um, one on top of the other. But if we want to alter that behavior, we have to alter the display property. So in this case, we are going to change it so that it doesn't behave like a block. So we make it a flex. So let's see what happens if we go back to our website. Uh, as you can see, uh, all the divs, they now appear side by side, and it's easy for us to build each profile box. Maybe let's try to build one of these boxes, and let us complete it so that everything makes sense. So I'll also embed a picture for our profile box, and where is this file located? It's on the desktop, so must have this file on the desktop. Okay, let me just see if this is the case. Okay, yes, that's me and my brother sometime in 2005. So we have created an image. We are giving it a width of 100%. So this is 100%, and it is 100% in relation to its parent, not 100% of the screen size. Okay, so the picture is coming out and it looks nice, but we may also want to improve the way it looks. Profile box, the image. Okay, let's put a border radius. Let's see what happens. Let's make it 50%. Okay, doesn't look so bad. Um, Okay, so what we've done so far, we have put an image, and we also put a name besides the image. And also we try to put a bit of content for each of the profiles. Okay, but unfortunately, because of time, we won't be able to make a very nice box. So I think we just leave it as it is. Or maybe let me just replicate the one that I made again. But we have to think of the names again. So let's say this is the first one is Tinashe. Okay. So this is what the output looks like as of now. So if you can see, each profile box is supposed to occupy 25% of the parent. Um, and the parent container, which is called profile container, is occupying 100% of the screen size. Just to prove this, we can use the debugging capabilities built into most of the browsers. So if you just put your mouse over, you see that the profile container occupies almost the full width of the screen. But each of these items is not occupying 25% of the parent's width. So it means something is wrong there. So that's what we'll try to fix. So remember, when we're displaying, we code it, we changed the default behavior so that our profile container becomes what we call a flex. With a flex, the container is not as rigid, so it allows so much flexibility. That's what I can say. So if there is dynamic content, that container has ways of resizing, and um, it can fit to whatever content you're trying to put within the container. But in this case, everything is being squeezed into just one row. So even if we put 10 items, so I just replicated a couple of items, you see that things quickly become overcrowded. So how do we solve this problem? So Flex comes with extra parameters um, that we can make use of to tell the container how to behave if it is a flexible container. So let's say the container becomes too small for the content. What should happen? So we can tell the container that, let's say the content is too much, because in this instance, each profile box is supposed to occupy 25%, but we put more than 100% worth of content size. So as a result, the flex container will try to fit everything within the available space, but we can also instruct it to wrap around. So what this means is, let's say we run out of space. In other words, if we occupy the 400% width, the flex container will move the content to the next line. So with flex wrap, and then we put it as wrap, you'll see that our content resizes to the next row instead of being squeezed into the same row. So this is what our boxes look like now. Yes, they look very ugly, but I hope you get the idea. Now, let's try to put some spacing between each of these items. So we'll use margin as the first parameter, then maybe let's space them out by 5 pixels. And each box should have a sense of distancing within itself so that content is not at the margins of the container. So try to push it inwards a little bit. Maybe let's put a padding of 20%. So this looks a bit better than what we initially had. But if you noticed, we specified a width of 25%, but for some reason, only 3 items are appearing per row instead of 4 items. So this is because we specified a border, then we have margin, then we have padding. So we can easily fix this problem by using the calc function. In other words, we still want each item to occupy 25%, but we also want to take into account the padding, which is 20 pixels per side. So it means that would be 40 pixels plus five, the 10 pixels for margin. So that would make it 50 pixels in total. So it's 25 pixels by 2 for each side. Then we make it at 50%. Also maybe, or maybe let's try and see what happens. Okay, it's not yet there. Remember, we also have a border. So maybe let's put 2 more pixels for the border. And there we have it. Our content now fits within the designated space. So that problem is fixed. Okay, so let's say we had profile boxes which look something like this. Yes, we could make it nicer. Mm, okay. Mm, okay. So let's say these were our profile boxes, but because we have a large screen as of now, because we have a large screen as of now, um, we can have 4 items fitting on the same page. But what happens if we try to resize our window? Um, you see that as our available screen size becomes smaller, the content starts to deform. So that's a problem that we're trying to fix as well. So in order for us to fix this problem, we need to specify rules that apply for different screen sizes. So that's where we apply the at media directive. So the at media directive is used when we have content uh, that should fit on different screen sizes. So we can have different rules for different screen sizes. Okay. And the good thing about the at media directive is that, let's say your screen size changes during runtime. In other words, you have loaded a web page. After the page is displayed with one screen size, all of a sudden changes might happen. And when that resize takes place, the at media allows a reevaluation of all the rules so that new sizes or new size rules may be effected, um, so that it always remains relevant with the current display. So just in case you are wondering why it's necessary to resize the screen size at runtime, just consider how we use mobile phones. Most of the time, we use a mobile phone in portrait mode. In other words, it has more height than width, so the vertical size is more than the horizontal size. But normally, when people are browsing the internet or when they're playing games, they switch the size or they switch the orientation of the phone so that it becomes what we call landscape. So in landscape, we have uh, a wider horizontal coordinate than the vertical one. So because of these changes, when you're browsing a website, you may view some pages while it's in portrait mode, but for a better view, you may switch to landscape mode. So when that happens, the website should be able to resize according um, to rules for the new screen sizes, because obviously when the width is smaller than the height, and all of a sudden things change and the width is now bigger than the height, we need different rules for such type of situations. Okay, but one thing to remember with CSS rules in general, um, the last rule is the one that wins. So what that means is, let's say for example, so let me switch back to our IDE. So let's say for our profile box, um, there I have a background color. Okay, so maybe let me put another rule for the profile box. So let me put another background color and make it red. And let's see what happens to our website. So it becomes red. But if we leave that rule there, then we choose to also make the background color green. So what that means is the first background color is ignored as soon as the browser encounters another background color. And the same applies when we meet the green background color, the red one is ignored. And so is the first one, which is light gray. So let's say we wanted certain rules to remain in effect, even if another section of CSS tries to override that rule. What we can do to make sure a certain rule stands, no matter what, is we put the important directive as well. So this is what we use to protect certain rules from being changed by other scripts or by other portions of the CSS. So in this instance, because we put the important directive after the red tag, it will remain in effect regardless of what was specified before and what was specified after. But what happens if we put the important tag on the gray one, on the gray background color as well? So that's a conflict, and it requires arbitration. Remember what we said earlier concerning CSS rules. We said the last rule wins. So let's say we put the important directive on more than one style. Like for the profile box, we put a background color of gray, then we marked it as important. Then we also put another background color of red, and we also marked it as important. So these two rules, they occur at the same level of importance. In other words, they are considered the same. So, in that instance, the last rule, which is an important directive, is the one that wins. So, the general rule is, let's say none of the styles have the important directive on them. It means the last one, which is within the range of conflicting styles, the last one is the one which takes precedence over the others. But if one of those styles is marked as important, the one which is marked as important, it is prioritized. But if more than one style is marked as important, then the last one to be marked as important is the one which is considered. Okay, so let's proceed. Um, Maybe let me remove these strange colors from our profile box. It doesn't look so good, but I think it serves its purpose in demonstrating how we can make it responsive. So as we resize our screen, or well, with a desktop browser, you can resize by yourself. But let's say somebody's on their mobile device, the screen size can be small by default. So we just want to simulate uh, that situation where we have a small screen. So what we are going to do now, remember we put a profile box, then we put the width that is preferred. The other thing that we need to do is we need to come up with screen sizes that we are going to support for our profile box. In other words, what are the different screen sizes that are recognized by the profile box? So let's say the smallest screen is something less than 700 pixels. So for such a display, we'll just, I think, would want the profile box to occupy the full width of the screen. So that's what we put as the default rule. So we put it first, um, like what we've done. So the profile box by default, it accepts a width, well, it assumes a width of 100%. Okay. Um, but let's say we have a screen size that is around 700 pixels. So we put the at media directive. Then we specify that for screen sizes that have a minimum width of about 700 pixels, um, we want a different set of rules for the profile box. So if the screen size has at least 700 pixels, then the profile box can have a width of so now let's use that calc directive. Then we say 50% minus what? 50 pixels. So the idea is any screen that is above 700 pixels should be able to display two profile boxes. So that's what we're trying to do here. Well, I think for now that's okay. Then we can have screens that are also larger that have a width of at least 1000 pixels. I think most desktop computers fit into this category. So for screen sizes that are greater than 1000 pixels, we want to use a width of 33% minus 50 pixels for padding. Then also we may want to support a screen that has a size of let's go with 1300 pixels. So most modern computers that have large displays or HD displays, they should fit into at least this category. So for screens with at least 700 pixels, we have a width of 50%. So we have two items per row. Then anything above 100 pixels, sorry, 1000 pixels, we have a width of 33%. So in other words, we expect three items per row. But if we have a minimum width of 1.3 pixels, then we can have at least four items per row. So I think that's as far as we can go. So let's experiment with the different sizes. So let's switch over to the browser and let's refresh. Okay, so let's see what happened. Oh, it's not, or maybe let me just reduce the amount of padding. It's too much anyway. So I think that's better. Or, well, the Okay, let's just leave it like that. It's okay. So this is what we have so far for anything that is, how many pixels do we have now? So at 1.4 pixels, we have 4 items. So let's try to reduce the number of pixels up to around 1.3 pixels. Let's see if anything changes. Um, Notice that the fourth item is cheaper. So when we go below 1.3, cheaper must come to the next row. Okay. So we have seen a resize there. We still have the same number of items. Okay, let me delete these excessive ones. We had duplicated them. Um, I think we had replicated them for a certain purpose, which is no longer relevant. So okay, how many items do we have now? 6. Let's put a seventh one. Let's put Thomas here, and Thomas is a plumber. He's been a plumber since 1980. Maybe let's say he retired last year. Okay. Unfortunately, we're using the same picture. So anything below 1.3 pixels, um, it goes to 33%. Then if we go below 1000 pixels, we expect 2 items per row, because we'll now be using the row, we will now be using the rule for 700 pixels upwards. Okay. So let's try to go below 700 pixels, and we should see 1 item per line. Okay. So that's okay. That's okay. So that's how we could build a responsive website. Unfortunately, there is so much that we need to know and so much that we need to do in order to make content that is more good looking. It takes more time, but for the sake of demonstration, I had to just put up this ugly profile box. But I hope the concept that I was trying to share was well understood, and feel free to ask any questions. So for this video, we'll end